communicating with me, loving me.
And negotiating with you.
Yes, and respecting herself, okay?
Welcome back to GlowGossips USA, the channel where we rip away the polished mask and reveal the raw, hidden truth of the Brown family. We've all witnessed the crumbling facade of sister wives, the tears, the betrayals, and the slow collapse of a family once sold as unshakable. But what if I told you the collapse didn't begin with Christine's shocking exit or Meri's catfishing scandal? What if the rot began much earlier, buried deep in a lie so dangerous that it doomed the Browns long before TLC ever turned on the cameras? Today, we dive straight into the most forbidden question of all. A theory whispered for years, too explosive for mainstream coverage. A theory that rewrites everything we thought we knew about Kody Brown, about Robyn, and about the so-called family of faith. Was Robyn's eldest son, Dayton, secretly Kody's child from the very beginning? The official narrative is wrapped neatly, tied with bows of sympathy and second chances. But once you tug at the seams, the whole story unravels. Before we step further into this rabbit hole of secrets, I need you to do one thing. If you're brave enough to question the official story, brave enough to see the truths TLC would rather bury, smash that like button right now. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Because trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of what's about to unfold. Let's start with the story we were sold. For over a decade, the Browns have repeated the same script. Robyn Sullivan, a young single mother of 3, left her troubled marriage with David Jessup and struggled alone in St. George, Utah. Enter Kody Brown, the charming polygamist patriarch, introduced by his first wife, Meri. In 2009, this meeting was framed as fate, destiny even. Kody swooped in, rescuing a broken woman, and by 2010, Robyn was presented as his redeemed 4th wife. Her 3 children, Dayton, Aurora, and Brianna, were embraced as his own. Years later, in what TLC painted as a breathtaking act of love, Kody even legally adopted the kids, after Meri herself sacrificed her legal marriage so Kody could wed Robyn. It was marketed as romance, rescue, and redemption. But underneath, it was a carefully manufactured illusion. The cracks begin with one word: timeline. Every time Robyn is pressed about when exactly her marriage ended and when she first met Kody, her answers dissolve into vague, emotional smokescreens. Tearful recollections, stories of darkness and abuse. Not facts, not dates. Sympathy as camouflage. But here we're not chasing sympathy. We're chasing truth. The official papers tell us Robyn and David finalized their divorce in 2007. Dayton, meanwhile, was born in January of 2000. At first glance, that kills the theory. Case closed, right? Wrong. That's exactly the point of the cover story. To make you stop asking questions. Insiders have whispered for years that Robyn's marriage was over in practice, long before it ended on paper. Which means the years we need to scrutinize aren't 2007, but the late 1990s, the window of Dayton's conception, spring of 1999. So where was Kody in 1999? He wasn't just a husband locked in one home. He was a traveling salesman, crisscrossing Utah, Arizona, and Nevada, with little accountability and plenty of freedom. Even his wives admitted he was often gone for weeks at a time. And where was Robyn? Embedded in the same tiny, insular AUB polygamist community where everyone knew everyone. A world where Kody Brown was already a well-known figure. To believe they just happened to meet for the first time in 2009? That's not just unlikely, it's absurd. And here's where the whispers from the pews come in. Former church members claim Kody and Robyn had a connection years before sister wives ever existed. Rumors circulated about Kody's wandering eye and Robyn's ambition to climb higher in the community. The image of Robyn as a helpless outcast doesn't match the story whispered in the back rows. A woman who knew exactly which powerful man could change her life. Dayton's conception, spring 1999, is the critical puzzle piece. On paper, he's David Jessup's child. But their marriage was already unraveling. What if Robyn, during that chaos, turned to Kody, a charismatic salesman blowing through town? And what if one moment of forbidden passion changed everything? The result would be catastrophic. A child conceived in an affair, in a community where such a scandal meant excommunication and disgrace. The solution? Pretend the child belonged to the husband on paper, a deception to protect reputations, legacies, and futures. Now look again at the show through this lens. Kody's bond with Dayton wasn't that of a stepfather trying to earn trust. It was immediate, urgent, and oddly possessive. He hovered over Dayton in a way that stood out even compared to his own children. Remember how often he insisted, "We just connect. I understand him in a way no one else does." That wasn't just stepdad intuition. That was cellular recognition, a father seeing himself in his son. Take the ATV accident. When Dayton was injured, Kody's panic was visceral. He didn't just care. He unraveled. His terror was the raw fear of a father nearly losing a firstborn he could never openly claim. And Robyn, watch her tears with fresh eyes. Her endless crying, her fragile image. Perhaps not mere sensitivity, but the exhausting performance of a woman carrying a decade-long secret. By villainizing her ex-husband David as abusive, she permanently silenced him as a credible threat. If he ever dared suggest Dayton wasn't his, who would believe him? And finally, the adoption. On the surface, a gesture of love, but beneath, a strategic erasure. By stripping David of rights, Kody didn't just adopt Robyn's children. He ensured the one child who might expose the truth was legally, permanently his. This wasn't about love. It was about ownership. About covering a lie so massive it reshaped the fate of an entire family. The fate of an entire family. This wasn't just Kody Brown using the legal system to adopt Robyn's children. It was Kody Brown rewriting history. It was about retroactively claiming the son he may have fathered in secret years earlier. By pushing through the legal adoption, Kody wasn't just securing a new family, he was erasing the old story and locking the truth behind legal paperwork that could never be undone. It was about closing the loop, burying the scandal, and making sure no one, not even Robyn's ex-husband, could ever step forward to challenge his claim as Dayton's one and only true father. And suddenly the coldness, the venom, the emotional starvation he inflicted on Meri begins to make sense. She was the sacrifice. Once she signed those divorce papers, once she cleared the legal path for Kody to marry Robyn and adopt Dayton, her usefulness was over. She had served her purpose in his great cover-up. After that, she was discarded. Disposable. And that explains why Kody's indifference toward Meri hardened into outright cruelty, because in his mind, she had already been used as a pawn in the larger game. This forbidden theory explains the toxic centerpiece of sister wives, the family-destroying favoritism Kody displayed toward Robyn and her children. For years, viewers, critics, and even his other wives have been left speechless by it. Why would a man obliterate decades of marriage and alienate 13 children just to elevate one wife and her kids? Why funnel the family's finances into Robyn's grand house while Janelle's kids were living in an RV and Christine's children fought for scraps of attention? Why did Robyn's children always get the lion's share of protection, privilege, and resources, while the rest of the Brown kids were left in the dust? If Robyn was simply the fourth wife, it would be inexplicable, illogical, self-destructive. But if Dayton is Kody's firstborn son, conceived in secret before the cameras ever rolled, then it all makes terrifying sense. Robyn isn't just a wife. She is the guardian of the secret. The woman who gave Kody something no other wife ever could. The son he could never acknowledge in public, but could never let go of in private. This isn't favoritism. It's obsession. It's a pact sealed in secrecy and guilt, a silent agreement that bound Kody and Robyn together for life. And the other children? They weren't just upset because a new wife got more attention. Children know authenticity when they see it. They felt deep in their bones that something was wrong. They watched their father pour a different kind of love, a different intensity, into one set of children, and it stung because it was real. Christine's kids, Janelle's kids, even Meri's daughter. They weren't just jealous. They were being asked to swallow a lie, to pretend this new family was no different, when their father's actions screamed the opposite. Their instincts were right. This wasn't just favoritism, it was betrayal. Let's push deeper into the cracks, into the slips of the tongue, the odd phrases, the little details fans ignored but which now look like confessions hiding in plain sight. In one early season, Kody gushes about Robyn's children, saying, "It was like they were mine from the very beginning." Viewers swooned at the sentimentality. But what if that wasn't metaphorical? What if it was literal? What if Kody, for a fleeting second, forgot to wear the mask and let the truth leak out? And then there's Robyn. In one of her endless teary confessionals, she drops a chilling phrase. She says she had to guard her virtue even inside her first marriage. The audience took this as melodrama, her way of explaining why she was basically a born-again virgin when she met Kody. But what if it wasn't melodrama? What if it was a cryptic justification? A coded confession that she had already crossed the line with someone else? What if guarding her virtue was less about David Jessup being unloving and more about excusing the fact that she'd stepped outside her marriage long before it officially ended. That's not innocence. That's strategy. Then come the digital breadcrumbs, old blog posts whispered about in fan circles, posts supposedly linked to members of the Browns' church community in the late 2000s, before Sister Wives ever aired. Posts that mysteriously vanished once TLC's cameras turned the Browns into a brand. In one alleged post from 2008, a full year before Meri supposedly introduced Robyn to Kody, Robyn is referred to as a friend of the Brown family. How could that be unless Robyn and Kody's connection had begun long before the public was told? If real, this is the smoking gun, proof that the official timeline is fabricated. And then the sightings. Former church members claim Kody's car was spotted in Robyn's hometown of St. George multiple times between 2007 and 2009, always explained away as sales trips. But what if those weren't business trips at all? What if they were visits to see a woman and a child he was desperate to keep close? When you stack the evidence, the picture becomes undeniable. A closed community that made secret meetings possible. A conception window that aligns too perfectly with Kody's travels. A divorce that delayed and blurred the truth. Robyn's endless vagueness about her past. Kody's over-the-top obsession with Dayton. The legal gymnastics of Meri's divorce and Robyn's marriage. And the suffocating favoritism that destroyed the family from within. Suddenly, the official story becomes the least believable version. The forbidden theory becomes the only explanation that makes sense. Sister Wives stops being the story of a man trying and failing to live plural marriage. It becomes the story of a man who fathered a child in secret, then spent 20 years constructing a sprawling deception to cover it up. Kody didn't bring Robyn into the family because he wanted another wife. He brought her in because he needed a way to bring his hidden son home. The rest, Meri, Janelle, Christine, their children, they weren't his partners. They were camouflage. Extras in a decades-long production staged for the church, the network, and the world. And when you frame the story this way, everything falls into place. The narcissism, the paranoia, the rage whenever Christine or Janelle dared to challenge him. They weren't just leaving a marriage. They were threatening to expose the fragile scaffolding of his greatest lie. Robyn's endless tears and control? Not neediness, but fear. Fear that if Kody wavered, if he let go, the truth would consume them both. And then there's Dayton himself, the innocent in this tangled mess, raised under a shadow he likely doesn't even know exists. For him, the man he calls dad might secretly be the man who has always been his father. And the man whose name is printed on his birth certificate may have been nothing more than a placeholder in a silent, devastating conspiracy. This isn't just family drama. This is the core of the Brown family tragedy. Everything we've seen, every tear, every fight, every broken relationship, has been fallout from one forbidden secret. A secret with a name, Dayton. A secret with a name, Dayton. To protect their carefully crafted illusion, Kody and Robyn needed to do more than just spin a story. They needed to control the narrative at its very core. And the easiest way to control a narrative is simple: silence anyone who could contradict it. There are 3 chilling possibilities explaining David Jessup's silence. Possibility 1, bought silence. Money talks, and in this case, money may have screamed. A payoff, a quiet legal settlement, or even a non-disclosure agreement could have been arranged during the divorce and adoption proceedings. Remember, when by the time Kody and Robyn were pushing for legal adoption, TLC cameras were rolling, money was flowing, and the stakes were sky high. A silenced ex-husband meant a smooth narrative on national television. Possibility 2, weaponized fear. The Apostolic United Brethren, AUB community, is small, tight, and ruthless when it comes to social order. The pressure within this world can be suffocating, crushing anyone who dares step out of line. David Jessup may have been threatened with more than just ostracism. Perhaps he was told that if he spoke out, he would not only be cast out of the community, but risk losing all contact with Aurora and Brianna forever. For a father trapped between his reputation and his daughters, silence could have felt like the only option. Possibility 3, the most haunting. David Jessup may have known all along that Dayton wasn't his biological son. He may have been the first casualty of the Kody-Robyn conspiracy. Picture it, the late 1990s, a failing marriage and a young Robyn carrying a child not conceived with her husband. The fallout would have been catastrophic in their religious world. What if Kody promised her a future even then, whispering that one day he would legitimize their love? But until then, the truth had to stay buried? In this scenario, David became a placeholder, a puppet who agreed, or was forced, to play father on paper until Kody could execute his master plan. Suddenly, the smooth adoption process makes sense. On the show, it's presented as though David willingly relinquished parental rights because he was a bad, uncaring father. But termination of parental rights is rarely that easy. It often requires consent. What if David's consent wasn't rooted in apathy, but in knowledge? Knowledge that Dayton wasn't biologically his to begin with. His silence then becomes not the silence of an abuser, but the silence of a man erased to protect a secret he never had the power to expose. Now let's contrast Kody's relationship with Dayton against his relationships with his official biological sons, particularly Janelle's and Christine's boys. If favoritism were just about the thrill of a new family, the glow should have faded. But it didn't. It only grew stronger. Look at the disparity. Logan, Kody's firstborn with Janelle, was a model son. Responsible, self-sacrificing, the rock for his younger siblings. Kody respected him, yes, but where was the obsessive devotion? Where was the desperate cling? It wasn't there. Then we turn to Hunter, Garrison, and Gabriel. These boys have all spoken, directly or through their mothers, about the gaping wound of their father's absence. And then came the most infamous example of all, Gabriel's birthday call. Kody, forgetting the date entirely, phoned his son only to ramble about his own COVID symptoms, never once centering Gabriel's pain. The boy broke down in tears, sobbing over the father he once had but no longer recognized. Kody's reaction? Cold, detached, almost resentful. Now compare that to his behavior with Dayton. Every milestone, every decision, every challenge in Dayton's life became the family's top priority. Dayton's college choice. Dayton's living arrangements. Dayton's emotional well-being. Each one carried the weight of destiny. When Kody spoke of Dayton, his voice filled with pride and tenderness, almost reverence. When he spoke of Garrison or Gabriel, anger, contempt, dismissal. He even called them jerks who owed him apologies. Why? Why would a man discard his biological sons while clinging with such ferocity to his adopted one? The theory gives us the answer. The labels are wrong. Dayton is not Kody's adopted son. Dayton is Kody's true firstborn, the child of his secret soulmate, the product of his forbidden affair. To Kody's fractured psyche, Dayton represents the life he always wanted. Meanwhile, Garrison and Gabriel represent the chains of the life he was trapped in. His bitterness toward them is misdirected rage at Christine and Janelle, the wives he resented, the obligations he wished he could shake. His neglect isn't neglect, it's punishment. They were not Dayton. And if that weren't enough, follow the money. Because the financial trail of the Brown family paints its own damning picture. From the very beginning, resources flowed disproportionately toward Robyn and her children. At first it seemed subtle, nicer rental homes, better clothes. But eventually it culminated in the disastrous move to Flagstaff. From the outside, the move was chaos. They abandoned stability in Las Vegas, 4 homes in a tight-knit cul-de-sac where the family had roots, for scattered, unaffordable properties in Arizona, a barren patch of land, costly rentals, and one enormous house, purchased outright, that just so happened to be Robyn's. And what justification was trotted out for this upheaval? Dayton's supposed acceptance into a Flagstaff college. Once again, the needs of Robyn's son eclipsed the needs of the other 18 people in the family. An entire clan of 20 uprooted, destabilized, and driven into financial ruin. Also, Kody could keep his hidden firstborn close. This wasn't just a move. It was a family-wide sacrifice at the altar of the secret son. The altar of the secret son. After the move to Flagstaff, the disparity within the Brown family could no longer be disguised. Kody and Robyn secured a $1 million mansion, 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and even a lush forested backyard. A castle fit for royalty. Meanwhile, Christine was trapped in a cramped rental, barely able to stretch her legs. Janelle, pragmatic and loyal for decades, was reduced to buying a 5th-wheel trailer, parking it on barren land with no infrastructure, because there were no funds left for her housing. And Meri, isolated in a large, overpriced rental, rattling around alone, paying premium rent while watching her legal marriage and identity evaporate. The family pot, once filled by the sweat of the original wives, through side businesses, book deals, and the show's early success, had been drained into one outcome, the luxurious comfort of Robyn and her children. This wasn't incompetence. This wasn't poor budgeting. This was deliberate financial engineering. In Kody's mind, he wasn't wasting the family's wealth. He was funneling it into his real family's kingdom. He was building a legacy not for all of his children, but for the bloodline he created in secret with Robyn. And the proof? Look no further than the infamous Coyote Pass property, the so-called family dream. For years it has sat undeveloped. No progress, no construction, because it was never meant to be real. It was a distraction, a dangling promise to keep the other wives compliant while Kody focused on his true objective, cementing Robyn's dominance and Dayton's future. The most blatant piece of evidence is hidden in plain sight, the family's business entity, Dabsark Entertainment, LLC. This is the legal body that controls all their show income. A lifeline, the financial heart of the Browns. And what does Dabsark stand for? Dayton, Aurora, Brianna, Solomon, Ariella, Robyn, and Kody. That's it. Kody and Robyn and her 5 children. Not a single mention of Meri, not Janelle, not Christine, not the 13 other children. Entirely erased from the financial DNA of their empire. This isn't just a clue. It's a confession, a flashing neon sign. Kody declared to the world in legal ink exactly who he considered his true family. Robyn was not a 4th wife. She was the queen. Her children were not stepchildren. They were the heirs. Everyone else was irrelevant, useful only for optics and ratings. And now we must reconsider the tragedy of Meri Brown. The official story paints her as lonely, vulnerable, and naive. The wife who opened the door to Robyn because she wanted to please Kody and believed a new sister wife would bring unity. But that story is a fairy tale. The darker truth? She was manipulated into betraying herself. Kody and Robyn, bound by their hidden past, needed a legitimate way to weave Robyn into the family tapestry. A chance meeting would be too suspicious. But an introduction by the first wife? That was bulletproof. That was untouchable. So Kody groomed Meri. He fed her complaints about loneliness. He whispered that the other wives didn't understand him. He planted seeds, the idea of a new spiritual woman who could bring him closer to God and closer to her. All the while, Robyn was waiting in the wings. When the time came, Meri thought she was acting out of kindness. She thought she was bringing her husband a companion, a balm for his restlessness. But in reality, she was handing her marriage over to the Trojan horse that would destroy her family. And what was her reward for this misplaced loyalty? Erasure. After she divorced Kody, the final step required for Robyn's legal marriage and the adoption of her children, Kody's mask dropped completely. He declared publicly that he no longer saw himself as married to Meri, that he had no desire for intimacy, that she was simply done. She had served her purpose. The pawn had been removed from the board. Viewed through this lens, Meri's catfishing scandal is not just the mistake of a desperate woman. It is the primal scream of someone who has been used, discarded, and psychologically annihilated. She sacrificed everything, her legal bond, her unique role as first wife, her place in the family, for a lie she never fully understood. The man she built her life around had betrayed her in the most profound way. Her online entanglement wasn't about infidelity. It was about trying to feel seen after being erased by the man she thought she knew. Fast forward to the implosion of the Browns, and the pieces fit perfectly. Christine's departure was the first crack. She couldn't endure Kody's blatant favoritism any longer, couldn't allow her children to remain in a system where they were treated as second-class citizens, while Robyn's kids were treated as royalty. Janelle's exit followed. The calm, rational Janelle, who had stomached so much, finally broke when Kody demanded she throw her sons, Garrison and Gabriel, out of the house and forced them to apologize to him and Robyn. It wasn't just a cruel ultimatum. It was loyalty testing. To Kody, his son's defiance was not teenage rebellion. It was treason against the queen and her heirs. And treason could not be forgiven. Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. A source close to production revealed the set had become unbearable. Not because of marital strain, but because of Kody's obsessive need to shield Robyn from scrutiny. If producers asked questions that made her look bad, he erupted in fury. If a storyline threatened to drift too close to her past, he shut it down. The crew described it as filming under hostage conditions, with everyone walking on eggshells. This wasn't a polygamist household unraveling. This was a dictator protecting a secret. And beyond the cameras, former AUB insiders claim Kody and Robyn's connection was an open secret long before TLC ever showed up. A whispered rumor? A scandal too dangerous to say aloud, but one everyone quietly knew. When the Browns were chosen for television, the community had a choice: expose the past or bury it forever. They chose silence. Together, they conspired to protect the brand, the paycheck, and the illusion. Now look at Kody today. The carefree patriarch of season 1 is gone. In his place stands a bitter, paranoid man, his hair thinning, his face hardened by rage, his voice cracked by desperation. This is the physical cost of living under a lie for more than 2 decades. Christine and Janelle's departures weren't divorces. They were breaches in his cover story, security leaks in his lifelong con. They took their voices, their truths, and their fans with them. And that terrifies him because once the women are free, the truth can finally spill out. Kody built his identity on being a successful polygamous patriarch. But that was always a fraud. His true identity is darker. A man who betrayed his wives, who manipulated his faith, and who built his empire on the bones of a lie. And now, stripped of his camouflage, sitting in his mansion with his co-conspirator, Robyn, the truth is beginning to glare through the cracks. Let's put it all together. A secret affair in the late 1990s between 2 married people in a rigid religious community. A child conceived in scandal. A cover-up so elaborate it required marriages, divorces, adoptions, and television contracts to hold it together. And that secret still has a name, Dayton. A child conceived in secret. A placeholder husband serving as cover. A first wife manipulated into opening the gates of her own destruction. A systematic funneling of money, affection, and power into a single branch of the family tree. A legal divorce. A strategic adoption. A business named only after the real heirs. A trail of favoritism so extreme it emotionally shattered 13 other children and drove 2 wives to walk away. And finally, a spectacular implosion that left the so-called patriarch a hollowed man, raging, paranoid, and trapped inside the crumbling castle he built on lies. When you see the Browns through this lens, every bizarre, cruel, and illogical action Kody has taken over the last 14 years snaps into terrifying focus. The forbidden theory isn't just gossip. It is the Rosetta Stone of sister wives. It deciphers the timeline. It explains the money. It clarifies the favoritism. It illuminates the rage. It lays bare the heartbreak and the destruction. The official story was a fairy tale sold to TLC. A man finding his soulmate, blending families, and creating a plural marriage that challenged tradition. But the truth? The truth is Shakespearean tragedy. A secret sin, adultery, betrayal, and deception that metastasized until it consumed everything around it. The Browns weren't destroyed by polygamy. They were destroyed by the long shadow of one man's original sin and the woman who became his accomplice. So the real question is not, is Dayton Kody's biological son? The real question is, how could he not be? To understand the wreckage, we must look not only at Kody and Robyn, but at the children raised under the weight of this lie. Take Aurora and Brianna. On paper, they were children rescued from a broken home, welcomed into a new father's embrace. But in reality, they were actors in their mother's performance. Their father, David Jessup, wasn't simply left behind, he was erased. His reputation was shredded on national television to frame Kody as their heroic savior. Their loyalty to him? It wasn't just love. It was survival. Their place in the family was conditional, tethered to Robyn's ability to hold her throne as the favored wife. And Aurora's anxiety, so visibly documented on the show, may be more than personal struggle. It may be the physical echo of a home poisoned by secrets, panic as her body's rebellion against living inside a house of lies. And what of Solomon and Ariella, Kody and Robyn's biological children? They are not just kids raised in the family. They are the heirs of the rewritten history. They've never known Meri as the first wife. They've never known Christine as the true believer. They've never known Janelle as the backbone of the household. To them, these women are outsiders, the difficult ones who abandoned their father. Their older siblings? Not brothers and sisters, but distant relatives. Solomon and Ariella are being raised inside a gilded cage, not just of wealth, but of propaganda. They are being taught that the only family that ever mattered is the Kody-Robyn monarchy. And then there's the crown jewel of the propaganda machine, the soulmate narrative. Kody and Robyn repeat it like scripture. We're soulmates. We're meant to be. It is their ultimate shield. The excuse for the favoritism, the justification for the money, the alibi for the neglect. But strip away the romantic glow and what do we see? Not destiny, not cosmic love. A cover story, a calculated alibi. They have to be soulmates, because if they're not, then they're just adulterers who conceived a child in secret and dismantled an empire of 18 people to protect themselves. The soulmate myth is their holy water. They sprinkle it on everything. On the financial betrayal, on the estrangement of sons, on the collapse of marriages, until selfishness is painted as sacred duty. Kody hasn't lived his faith. He's weaponized it. Each revelation, each vision, each spiritual calling has been a convenient justification for whatever Robyn wanted and whatever Dayton required. He bent religion into a shield, a smokescreen for his desires. And in doing so, he may have committed the very sins his faith warned would damn him eternally. Nowhere is this betrayal more devastating than in Christine's story. She was the believer, the polygamy princess, the one who entered not for Kody but for the principal. For 20 years, she endured disdain, dismissals, and Kody's infamous declaration, "I'm not attracted to you." It wasn't just cruelty, it was punishment. Christine was a walking reminder of the life Kody despised, the family he had to endure before he could finally crown Robyn. His rejection of her wasn't just marital drift. It was a campaign to break her spirit, to erase her confidence, to silence her. Her eventual escape wasn't a divorce. It was a revolution. Her new life, her monogamous love, is the final damning proof that the Browns weren't practicing plural marriage at all. They were trapped in the Kody-Robyn cult. And the sons, Gabriel and Garrison, their estrangement wasn't teenage rebellion. It was mutiny. When they refused to submit to Kody's COVID rules that conveniently allowed him to isolate with Robyn while ignoring the rest, he didn't see disobedience. He saw treason. They weren't just challenging him, they were challenging Robyn. And in Kody's warped monarchy, loyalty to Robyn mattered more than loyalty to blood. He demanded apologies. They refused. And the result was one of the most heartbreaking scenes in reality TV history. Gabriel sobbing on camera, mourning the loss of his father, as Kody coldly lectured him about his own suffering. That moment is the smoking gun. Kody's allegiance was no longer to his children. It was to the pact. The pact he made with Robyn decades earlier, the pact to protect the secret above all else, even if it meant sacrificing his sons on the altar of that lie. So what are we left with? A mountain of evidence. A motive, a forbidden love, and a secret child. The means? Kody's life on the road, free to roam. The opportunity? The narrow conception window of 1999. The pattern? 20 years of favoritism, manipulation, and paranoia. The silence of David Jessup. The business named after Robyn's children. The implosion of the family. The bitter, paranoid man screaming at cameras as his kingdom collapses. We will never see a DNA test on TLC. Kody and Robyn will never admit the truth. They will cling to their soulmate script until their dying day. But we don't need a test. The truth is already written in the wreckage. It's in Meri, discarded. In Janelle, forced to choose between sons and husband. In Christine, liberated after decades of emotional imprisonment. In Gabriel's tears. In Garrison's silence. In 13 children who learned that their father had room in his heart only for the family built on a lie. The tragedy of sister wives is not that plural marriage failed. The tragedy is that it was never real to begin with. What we witnessed was not a family, it was a cover story. And now, with the camouflage stripped away, all that remains is the haunting final image. Kody and Robyn alone in their mansion, victorious but hollow, surrounded not by love, but by ghosts. She won, she got everything she ever wanted, and everyone else paid the price. The only question left is not whether this theory is true. It's whether, after everything we've seen, you can still believe it isn't. Still believe it isn't.